Thank you so much. Good afternoon. Firstly, and that's an honest question because it will determine a lot. How many of us are hungry? Also, I've got the whole afternoon. That's fine. Okay, the second question, or before the second question, one thing that I realized what a blind spot, and I'm truly blaming Prof. Martin, because I worked with her on this program when we were preparing the program. And one mistake I did not realize exactly what our chairperson said, that so all of them are professors, doctors. Secondly, they are here with their supervisors or either or. And it's only me with no supervisor. And then, and with the chairperson of the board talking after the chairperson. And we know for some of us who've worked in government, you don't talk after your chairperson. You don't. So that really qualifies me to be as brief and short with no questions. So, Prof, so because you let me to be in this problem, you're going to answer the questions. Perfect. Colleagues, thank you so much for the opportunity. I'm very excited. And what makes me excited is the fact that I'm going to tell a story, obviously through having to follow, where the academic processes or way of presenting. However, it is a story because this is what happened. And now I'm relating it to as a way of sharing what we did, blaming to Jeanette, because this is her work. When I joined ATNS, she had already started what we call the legacy project. And basically now we are saying, let's review, is this legacy project really working? Do we need it or not? And the paper is based on the impact of the legacy project on the retiring workforce at ATNS. Just another question out of interest. I'm going to skip this in the interest of time. How many of us flew to come to this conference? Did we all fly? Yay! I'm so excited. You are my clients. From the ATNS, I'm just going to give a brief background of who's ATNS. The fact that you flew, that means you know who's ATNS. ATNS are the guys who are sitting at those towers, who are just controlling the flight, the airspace. Basically, we are responsible for the airspace. We are mandated by the Act of ATNS, which is basically the Air Traffic Navigation Services Company Act of Act 43. I can't see. What's wrong with me? Yeah. Okay. Maybe Act 45 of 1993. We report to the Minister of Transport. We are actually our main role is basically to manage the airspace as you on board and as you land. We make sure that you fly safely until you land, and then when you disembark, somebody takes care of you. So that's basically what we do. So imagine how much knowledge is shared between the pilot and the air traffic controller, between us as the operational staff supporting maybe basically. So there's a lot of knowledge that is shared and very critical, very specialized. So we are in a very, very critical, specialized environment. And there's a lot of experience because here we are basically having one person who walked into ATNS, perhaps, and I'm referring to air traffic controllers in this case, who walked into ATNS as just a matriculant, but grew through the ranks of becoming a traffic controller. Obviously, they've got levels, and through that whole pipeline, they know nothing except to control aircraft, except to work with pilots, except to work with us, obviously giving them the support. So they cannot be employed anywhere else except by ATNS, or rather leave the country. And so there's a lot of experience that they acquire. It's very significant. It's very important. However, we lose it due to retirement. Life happens. You have to retire, like some of us. So at some point, as you retire, the organization obviously loses that knowledge, loses that experience. So then a knowledge management manager, being Jeanette in this case, initiated what we call the legacy program, which is basically the legend. I think the name was just to make it sound nice. And that's another way of change management. We always have to be careful on what we name these initiatives. Because if we're saying retiring, not everybody wants to be called a retiree or I'm retiring or what. Sometimes not, it's like, yeah, you're undermining or whatever, or just like when somebody say go to you, you don't feel comfortable as much as you know that you're a go-go. So we then called it the legacy program because we call them legends. Basically, and if somebody says you're a legend, you feel a little bit like it means I'm important. So it was called the legacy program. It still holds that name. We're not thinking of things. And actually, people feel very important as soon as they are told that we're going to put into the legacy project. They get excited because they are feeling like, now I'm a legend, I've been recognized. So basically, the project promotes continuity and operational excellence by making sure that we harvest as much as we can. And we not only harvest, but we make sure that we transfer it to the new upcoming, air traffic controllers and technicians. So the project was mainly about that. But now we have a problem, which we are basically saying, how then do we make sure that this aging workforce who are about to retire, as they are creating this, or they have created this knowledge, but there's an age gap. The new ones, and there's an influx of new upcoming air traffic controllers, technicians, who do not have much knowledge, but they are expected to start controlling. They are expected to be, efficient and make sure that there's that effective, So our role as knowledge management is to say, how do we ensure that there is no age gap issues? There is no, there's knowledge transfer and making sure that the knowledge is, it's flowing between those who are about to retire and those who are actually coming into the business. So as we know, we are in we are operating in a very high risk, safety critical environment, and making knowledge to be managed in a way that it's very important that it is safeguarded, it's retained, and it can be utilized in the future, and ensuring that there are no failures when it comes to continuity and so on. So the launch happened, and this program has been up and happening for about almost 10 years, because I joined ATNS in 2015 and the project was already launched. So when I joined ATNS, it was just about, picking up, developing the policy, creating the awareness, and actually putting all the process in place. So the purpose of the studies now is to say, let's evaluate if the legacy project is actually effective in the organization in retaining knowledge from those who are about to retire, and making sure that we're transferring it into the new employees who are joining the organization. And basically, there are just two kind of objectives, not very long. The first one, we're assessing the impact of the legacy project on knowledge retention among employees in the technical environment and also the air traffic controllers. And secondly, it's also to identify what are the challenges and also success factors in the implementation of the legacy project, mainly around the transferring of knowledge between the two, those who are about to retire and those who are coming into the business. But then I'm not going to bore you with the literature review. Just to highlight that the focus of the literature was mainly obviously aligned to with the research objectives, and making sure that we assess what is available, and also making sure that the study is actually in line with the literature that is available. So there are a number of areas that we looked into. And the methodology, as I said, it was basically a qualitative approach using ATNS legacy project as a single embedded case study, and the data collection was mainly from the air traffic controllers and also the technicians, and it was an interviews done on Teams, basically lasting between 45 to 60 minutes, and it was recorded. Ethical clearance was done internally through our internal processes, the legal office, and there were limitations. The limitation that identified is basically the study is limited on basically ATNS. and focus on air traffic controllers and the technical services. And going into the findings, there are very, very, interesting findings out of this the study, because basically most of the participants highlighted that they find informal knowledge sharing more impactful than when it's formal, like, we're sitting in a class or while we are sitting, because one of the things that we do within the within the legacy project, it's master classes, whereby there will be a critical issue that is identified, facilitate a master class, whereby an expert will come who's about to retire, will come and share their own through a master class. And that's where we also try to capture as much as possible so that we have those artifacts. However, the finding says that, those ones are actually boring. They are not that exciting. We want the informal one, whereby we could stand next to an air traffic controller, a matured one, when they are doing they are controlling, and then we listen and we mimic what they are doing. And also, one of the findings is that the ensuring continuity prevents delays and the duplication. So they want this project to be because at some point we are there, sometimes we are not there. So there was a very strong feeling, strong articulation of saying this, the retiring project, the legacy project should be consistent, because this on and off, definitely at some point it's very discouraging. The common one, we know it, the leadership issue, that, as much as it's a very important and very critical initiative, however, the support of the leadership, it's sometimes not as visible as that, and more than anything, they don't feel that leadership recognizes the legacy project. Another one was the issue around that, the identification of subject matter experts. Yes, we identify the legends as special, because most of them are specialists by virtue of their knowledge and expertise that they have. However, there's a strong articulation of saying they need to be actually profiled and be identified and also be tagged accordingly so that they can be easily identified in the organization. And there was a strong feeling that knowledge management leaves a lot to the legends to take care of. It needs to be, and knowledge management function as a specialist and so on within the organization. They need to be present, do some of those facilitation, and make sure that they monitor the project to the T from from end to end. The challenges that were identified was basically to say, the issues around time constraints, because most of them, they work shifts. So they know they have to actually make sure that there is some negotiations in terms of shifts, availability, and so on. There's also reluctance and willingness to share in terms of people are a little bit, some are still willing, some are willing, some are not. There's a gray area in terms of whether people are doing it, for the sake of doing it, or they are doing it because they are willing to do it in terms of sharing. And there's also that there's as much as there's a lot of sharing that is happening between the air traffic controllers and those who are coming in, but that knowledge is not formally captured into documents or into a specific system. So they share informal, as much as they love the informal part of it, however, they needed to, they feel that there was a strong articulation of ensuring that can this knowledge be captured, made available either into a document or into a system. And another one that came so many times and was that there's a lack of the new ones who are joining the organization, as in the new employees, they somehow take long to warm up into the program. We identify them as beneficiaries, but they are either break their legs into getting into the program to be able to be mentored or to be in any of those initiatives that support the legacy program. And then only when it's almost about time for the legend to leave the organization, then they start saying, we need more. So there's another way of, there's a challenge that has been identified. The benefits that there are areas, I think there are pockets of excellence there in terms of leadership. There are areas where they feel that there's strong leadership. And yes, and one of the advantages, I think by virtue of knowledge management being quite, ATNS has been practicing knowledge management for more than 10 years. And it is part of and parcel of ATNS process. You cannot walk into ATNS and not hear anyone talking about knowledge management. It's strongly embedded. It is part of our processes. Everybody knows about it, including even the board members. You'll walk into a board session and you'll hear a board member talking about, no, this has to go into brown bag session, or this has to be a lessons learned, and so on, mentioning of some of our initiatives. So we are to a large extent, we put some kind of a pat on the shoulder in terms of how knowledge management is entrenched within the organization. However, when it comes to the visibility and also of leadership, there's still a strong feeling that, or a strong articulation of saying we need more leadership presence in these initiatives, especially the legacy project, because we're losing a lot of knowledge as the legends retire. And then another one, it's another that legends, can they be profiled so that we can actually know exactly their areas of specialization? It should not be a question of saying it's a legend, is about to retire, but there must be a clear identification and also an index of their areas of specialization. Another one, also a structured and a well-defined approach on how the legacy program should actually be delivered or be implemented. Mentorship, it has been seen as one of the strongest elements of the legend of the legacy project. Technology, there should be a seamless kind of a strong technology that is deployed as we are as part of ensuring that the legacy project is implemented successfully. And lastly, because currently it's one of the things that we are not doing, it's ensuring that the monitoring and evaluation of the program is done consistently. And the recommendations, which I think I just put them in bullet points for the sake of the presentation, it's to say strong and visible leadership involvement, one of those things. And I think that's a common one that we know about. And it's just a question of elevating the visibility of leadership in being involved in this project. Identification of and recognition of the subject matter expert within the legacy project. Robust technology infrastructure, making sure that we actually look into how can we enhance the current technology that we are currently using for the project. And also a structured approach in terms of knowledge retention, making sure that it becomes very strategic within the organization, and strengthening again the mentorship program within the legacy project. And lastly, an active monitoring and evaluation of the project itself. This is where I end without questions and answers.
Thank you. Thank you, Mbulase. Mzilikazi kaMashoba, wena wathi umuntu wabumya ngendaba. That was a quite comprehensive presentation. Thank you for that. But my question would be a very quick one. In the study, you did highlight the fact that there was a limitation. And the limitation is that you did not necessarily benchmark against the global players. Now, when I look at technology, and this is a legacy project, and you would find ordinarily you would have legends that are also in the technological space who would be leaving the organization. And we know that technology changes over time and it's a rapid pace. So what I wanted to find out is how then do you close that gap, considering the fact that now the old or the legends are leaving with the old knowledge of the old technology, and yet there's a new technology that is coming to the play, and how do you close that gap from a game perspective? Thanks.
It becomes very difficult when your own brother. Couldn't we discuss this at home? You're so spot on. We, especially within HNS, it's a very technological environment, and most of our technologies are actually developed internally by virtue of being in a very specialized environment and by the kind of technology that we deploy to make sure that the safety of aircraft as they fly, it's sustained, and it's actually the infrastructure is actually relevant. So interestingly, just for your information, and this is what I was actually discussing this morning with Dr. Baker Reza, having realized that, and it's most of that old technology, we're still keeping it. We're not even getting, we're now having a warehouse full of old radars, full of surveillance equipment and so on. Now we are even thinking of saying, we're not going to destroy them. We're actually now going to come up with a museum so that we make sure that this technology, as they evolve, we actually keep them, and also for obvious reasons if they are in a museum. As you know,
Stay on the podium, Doc. Stay on the podium. Thank you so much, Dr. Mabaso, for a very interesting presentation. My question is around resistance from the subject matter experts. How do you go about dealing with the resistance that you get from those subject matter experts? And then also in terms of the process that you follow, what is your lead time? Like, when do you approach the experts? And do you have like a once-off interview process, or is it something that you do over a certain time period?
Thanks, and thank you for asking that question, because I think for the purpose of the study, I didn't get into that detail. The program is designed, or the project is designed in a manner that we're working very closely. That's one thing that I must say. We work very closely with IT, with HR. We call it HC. And HR, the policy is defined in a way that every year, with no fail, we receive a list from HC of all people who will be retiring in the next 5 years. So they give us the list, we clean the list, then based on the list, so the process is as simple as when we receive the list, we normally receive the list around, I think, and we're possibly going to change it, but in Gina's days, she wanted the list around March, April, before the end of the year, of the financial year. So she will get the list, we clean it up, then we start identifying that, okay, Kotatso is reporting to Marty. Before we talk to Kotatso, because, and this also helps us from the point of resistance. So we'll go to Marty to say, Marty, Kotatso it's retiring in the next 5 years. And we'll do a little bit of research. And this is what we see about Kotatso's journey within HNS or even beyond HNS. And then Marty will say, yeah, she is a specialist on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Actually, we rely on her on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But can we capture that knowledge? So we've got 5 years to discuss this whole, but we're not discussing throughout the 5 years. The first year is just discussion. We map the knowledge areas. We identify the beneficiaries. And the beneficiaries will be cross-functional, not necessarily those who are actually within the unit. So they will be cross-functional. We get the lead from the line manager. We get the lead from the legend. However, before we even go to the legend, we speak to the line manager, because the line manager will give us an umbrella view of what is Kotatso doing and how can is she really a critical skill? And based on that, then we involve HC again, to say, HC, we will be harvesting Kotatso. And obviously, Kotatso might come and say, I need to be paid for this. This is my knowledge, da, 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 da. And in that case, we are avoiding that, because as soon as we raise that whole thing of saying, we need to pay you for sharing knowledge, it's actually spoiling us. But we now build it on your performance in an agreement on the next 3-4 years before you leave. So it's part of your KPIs in agreement with your line manager. So the legends are actually having that view of knowing that at some point, my performance will be clear that I need to share knowledge with so and so. And then KM has to come and identify the initiative that will assist in terms of sharing knowledge. It could be a masterclass, it could be mentoring, it could be Q&A, it could be a podcast. So we've got a sort of a bouquet of tools that we use to capture that knowledge. Okay, so the change then, it's actually not much of an issue, but obviously there will be issues there and there. But because, and what we do, we now negotiating this year will be the very first time that at our R&R, which is we've got the event at the end of the year, we will be recognizing the staff at methodating and the legends. They will be receiving certificates and 5,000. So that's the first time ever. So, you know, with time, we're maturing with some things that are actually making it more stronger and exciting.
Thank you, Doc.
There's lunch.
So the facilitator is threatening me.
It's because there's lunch.
Okay, good afternoon. I just want to check from our side, we don't have much issues in terms of participation, but the problem, okay, in terms of agreeing to participate, then when it's time for participation, especially when it comes to the head of the branches, you find that, okay, you've done all the work, like, you know, it's exciting. People are excited to, okay, we have the sessions that we call knowledge management hosting sessions, where we'll have a head of the branch, and then we'll have a panel members that will be roasting the head of the branch, and then the head of the branch will agree, né? And then when it's time for us to roast, then there's minister looking for all the head of the branches, then the priority is the minister. Then we postpone. Next time is another postponement. Okay, then we forget about this one. Then we have this one who's leaving. We want to roast the person. And then when we have done all the work, it's cancelled. How do we bring back the excitement? Like, it's like now you are playing with us. You know, you're always advertising this nice stuff of you, but at the end of the day, we don't see anything happen. How do we bring back the excitement? Okay, the other thing is like sometimes when maybe the head of the branch is not available for us to roast, then we'll ask for maybe for an alternative to say, okay, so if you're not available, can you give us someone from your branch that can just talk about your services, you know, so that we don't cancel the session. And then the head of the branch will say, no, I want to do this. And then at the end, it doesn't happen. So, and sometimes like then people don't take us serious anymore because like we're always canceling this thing or postponing them.
Yeah, I must say, you know, the advantage of being an SOE, you don't work directly with the ministers and so on. So I haven't experienced much of that, but cancellations, yes, we do. From the point of perhaps somebody's sick or perhaps he must be in the position. For instance, with air traffic controllers, they must, if he or she is positioned to be at the tower, you can't change it. And sometimes there are time slots you know, they have to change them and so on. Should it happen, and I think it's one in a million times that we get that, we then obviously have to cancel, and then we cancel. When we cancel, we don't say cancel, we say postponed, because sometimes then it's easy to come back, in a sense of saying you still have people waiting in anticipation because we said postponed. And one thing that that makes it easy for, because it's ATNS, we are a very small company. A total number of about 1 point something spread throughout the country, with one out of 15. So we are very small, and air traffic controllers they are possibly less than, and I'm talking about seasons, they are less than 100. And when we need them, it's easy for us to identify, and we work around them because we know that they work shifts, and so on. So we work around them. Same with technicians. Technicians are sometimes in the field, they're out of the country, they're busy in doing as well. So we work around them. So it is deliberate with us that we literally sit and we even involve the manager in terms of the scheduling and so on. So, and also we make sure that when we identify the time slots, especially when we're doing we call them brown bag session, where they will have to come and present, and we profile them, and then we end up perhaps into an article. We make sure that we look at their schedule. For instance, for the month of August, because we knew it's going to be Women's Month, and then now we're preparing for October. October is Transport Month, and we already have identifying specific topics. And so what we do, we go in advance because their schedules are two months in advance. So we go 2 months in advance to go and check on their schedule. And then, so when we did the August month, the Women's Month. We already had identified the women who are about to retire 2 months ago, and then we went through the schedule. So it's a very difficult situation that you are in, because yours, I know with government, they call you now, you have to be there now, you drop everything. So we've never been at that kind of situation.
Thank you so much, Doc.
They're not hungry.
I am certainly not hungry, I promise you. Thank you so much, Doc, for the presentation. I'm actually, I've picked up a few notes that I'm going to use to beef up my own harvesting framework, harvesting and retention framework that I'm sort of drafting at the moment. I'm actually interested in two things. With the harvesting methods that you use, the first one will be, are there any incentives that you provide to those who participate when you harvest, either than the new upcoming long-term service with the 5,000 and the certificate? And the second one will be, I think from you and other colleagues that have shared before, I'd like to know how easy it is to package what is being harvested and what methods do you use. Obviously, after the collection methods that I use, how do you package that for sharing and reuse? Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you for the question. The first one, the incentives we don't have. Trust me. I think it's now part of the culture. However, remember, they are contracted on their performance contract. So it's up to the manager to rate accordingly, because he or she must bring evidence during the performance discussion, and then they must be retained. So we are, as the years, for the first year, we'll give them to say, please give us 5% out of their time, which is going to be reflected on their performance contract. But as the years, for instance, towards the end, especially the last year, we request a minimum of 20% for knowledge sharing. It is on their performance contract. Number two, we always, every year, submit our budget with marketing, because marketing are the ones who've got money to buy. So what we do, we go to them when we submit budgets. And now we are approaching the budget season, isn't it? We'll be submitting our budget. So we go to marketing to say, please, can you put so much for us? Because we're going to need, the corporate gifts. We're going to need T-shirts. We're going to need them. So those are the things that we give. And people love corporate gifts, and especially for people. And I must say, ATNS employees they love ATNS. They are so, you've been there. I've invited Marty for several times. She knows how passionate they are. And it's all because it's a unique environment. So a T-shirt at ATNS means a lot. To wear ATNS T-shirt, it's like, you know what, I've made it. I've got a T-shirt. I'll give you a classical example. We recently had a Legends workshop here in Cape Town, where we call the legends around Cape Town. And because now we want them to be on our wall of fame for the museum that we are working on. So we call them for a coffee. Believe it or not, coffee. We said coffee because we didn't budget well. So my boss was a little bit not so happy that we want to take them to a restaurant for lunch. And I said, okay, they come to the center at the tower. We'll have coffee with you. And obviously them, but I managed to get money. We had lunch. So we had that lunch with them. Trust me, you know what we gave them? We gave them cups. That's written 18. They were so excited. And all what we wanted is for them to agree to say, we are creating a wall of fame. We want your names. We want it. Instead, we walk out there with a long list of even those who are deceased. Just for a cup of coffee and they take. So now we are working on this wall of fame, getting information from the legends who have already retired. So it's a culture. And this is a culture whereby I think it was built over a period of years.
Thank you, Doc. Last question. Last question.
Thank you, Chairperson. And thank you, Dr. Refiloe Mabaso, for the great and insightful presentation. Yeah, we are hungry, but we are hungry for knowledge as well. So, yeah, that was such a great presentation. I like the fact that you touched based on human capital matters. I'm working in human capital department, and some of the things that you mentioned today, they really touch base on my day-to-day function as a human capital personnel. So my question is, as you guys are doing succession planning for people that are about to retire, to transfer skills and knowledge to other employees that will be remaining in the organization so that the operation doesn't cease, but it still continues smoothly. So, and I realized, and you mentioned that you document some of the things that they need to actually, I will say, is objectives that they need to achieve or meet before they leave as part of their KPIs. So how do you ensure that they transfer some of the knowledge or skills that are not really documented? Because there might be some of the critical skills that they live with that were not really documented. I'll give you a practical example that I once experienced in my previous employers. One of our specialists, they had actually organization password for subscription for certain website that organization use, but they subscribe using their own personal Gmail account, not the company email. So by the time they leave with that information. Now we are stuck. No one can access such information. What do you do in such cases? Thank you.
Thank you so much for the question. Actually, I'm getting excited in responding to, because we wrote a piece. I'm not the knowledge manager, but the knowledge manager reports to me. So we wrote a piece, a very short piece on LinkedIn about more or less what you've just asked. And then guess what? That piece was identified by NASA. So NASA invited us to come and present about how do we document this knowledge transfer sessions and so on. So we've got two methods. Number one, we record. We make sure that even if, because most of them, they are physical, remember, because now they are at the towers, so the other one is busy controlling, the other one is standing, observing and so on. So we encourage recording. So we take the records, and I must say, AI became our best friend. So we obviously get the transcript from the AI, then we synthesize the transcript into knowledge areas, and then we bring them into a document. So we already have developed and we use SharePoint, by the way. So we have we create a sub-site on SharePoint for each and every legend with the beneficiaries. There will be obviously permission controls in terms of who can access that site to monitor and see. So if there's a podcast, that podcast is going to be available on that site. If there's any document, that document will be available on that site. If there's the transcript of that particular discussion that will happen between the beneficiary and the legend will be available on that site. So we are centralizing the documentation. And number two, I'm going to be very honest with you. Most of the time, it's verbal knowledge transfer by virtue of the work that they do. So we rely on them coming back to tell us the stories. And those stories, then we record them and we try to put them into transcripts.